Today it's time for a best of 3 series of professional StarCraft 2, and what I've got for you is a Terran versus Zerg, where in game number 1 we find ourselves on World of Sleepers. Spawning here in the top right hand corner of the map and playing with the blue Terran SCVs from the Netherlands, we're looking inside of the main base of uThermal. And his opponent in the opposite corner with the red Zerg drones from France, we have none other than Stephano. Alrighty. So both of these players, of course, have been around for a very long time in StarCraft 2. And while Stephano ended up winning a lot of tournaments, especially back in like 2011 to 2013 or so, nowadays he is quote-unquote retired. Now, I always have found that a little bit ironic, because even though he's quote-unquote retired, he's still a top-level pro gamer, and as of me making this video, he's the rank 47 in the world. I think he probably considered himself retired from StarCraft 2 when he first decided to go back to university after all of his tournament victories. Back in like 2014 is when he, I think, quote-unquote retired, but nowadays he's once again playing a ton, and he's certainly very good. He's always shown up at tournaments, and while he wasn't as dominant for a little while, especially recently, I've been really impressed by his gameplay. It's gotten to the point actually where I'm trying to play a lot of his strategies right now. So, you know, this cast right here, it's not entirely selfless. I certainly want to check out how Stephano decides to approach someone of the caliber of uThermal. Basically, he loves playing that super Ling Bane heavy style, and while he does mix in spellcasters, in the later stages especially, usually he just simply tries to brute force his way with a ton of stuff. Like, he defends, and then he has all of a sudden 90 workers, and he starts producing a million Zerglings and Banelings, and it's very difficult for a Terran player to stop. Now, uThermal, he's, as of me making this video, the rank 26 in the world, a very well-rounded Terran player. I think a couple of years ago, you may have been able to say that, hey, he is playing bio every single game, and he does kind of like a similar approach every single game. Nowadays, though, uThermal is an extremely well-rounded pro, and he's certainly going to be able to show us a variety of strategies. So I'm curious to see what this game is going to bring. Nothing too crazy just yet. It looks like uThermal actually ended up blocking. Is he going to go over to the 4th base already? No way. Oh no, this is just Stephano being cheeky, right? There's no way. No, there was an SCV. I think it was trying to block the 3rd base from going up, and it now forced Stephano to go for the expansion on the low ground instead. I thought for a second, excuse me, that he was thinking about getting a 4th hatchery going already. That would be extremely greedy, and probably too greedy, because then you get more larvae you can actually spend, so it's not going to actually help out your economical situation whatsoever. Nice little bit of back and forth micro though. Obviously, uThermal very good with the Reaper. He's trying to get the snipe right now on the first tumor, but Stephano being very cautious. There you go. Finally plants down a tumor at about 35 or so energy with the 2nd queen now also joining after injecting inside of that main base. Factory coming up right now, and that's actually a 2nd factory. So uThermal is already going to go for something a little bit cheeky. Okay, I love this. This is a build actually that we did see a lot back in the days where Stephano was dominating. I think this is likely going to be Blue Flame Hellions. That's really the only time you would go ahead and go for a 2nd factory, one with a reactor and one with a tech lab. You would basically switch over the factory here in a little bit and then start researching the Infernal Pre-Igniter upgrade. Now, Stephano is not a player who likes to go for the Overwatch speed upgrade early on. Not like, for example, we saw Cyril doing in a lot of his Zerg versus Terran. At the very least, I've never seen him getting it in recent times. So we'll see if this is going to be an issue at all, because if Stephano doesn't figure out that it's double factory, he could certainly be caught with his pants down, because there's a lot of damage that Blue Flame Hellions can do when you're just trying to defend with Zerglings and Queens. And you don't have any roaches, you don't have any banelings, you don't have any spine crawlers or anything along those lines. Alrighty, so there it is. Infernal Pre-Igniter at the 3.5 or so minute mark is when that upgrade started. Well, a little bit later than that, like 3:45 or so, but still. Oh, I haven't seen that in a while. This is an old school match of ZVT already in a way. Like both of the names, both of the players. I guess it's a new map. I mean, this was played at WCS Fall, so it is a very recent game. But anyways, uThermal trying to be brave here with these Hellions, but he certainly doesn't want to lose any, okay? Losing any right now, very painful. Now, one way you can scout this as well, actually, if you are... Okay, there we go. More Hellions moving out. If you are paying very close attention, if you're the Zerg, you can actually see that there's an uneven amount of Hellions. So since right now 3 Hellions are being produced at once, rather than the conventional 2 at once, sometimes you can see that there's like an odd amount of Hellions, and it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's going on. Stephano, though, going for his bread and butter. Really quick double evolution chambers. He's getting himself some spore crawlers. At this point, he has no idea what's going on. Now, the upgrade, the blue flame upgrade, will finish up in a second. I don't see an armory anywhere, so I do think that this is just going to be straight up millions of Hellions. Okay, well, as many as he can make anyway. And there we go. Stephano is going to have to deal with a ton of these blue flame boys. 13 Hellions in total versus, well, what is soon going to be, like, I don't know, 20 Zerglings or so? Really not that much. Couple of spines coming up right now as well. Apparently, there was a quick pause in the game. Stephano requesting a break, but these Hellions are going to look for the mineral line. It's very critical that they deal a bunch of damage, though. There are a ton of queens available. Love the run by here. uThermal decided not to fight anything. Just go into the main. Yeah, there you go. I think the main base is the way to go. These queens need to catch up. They're going to be the main brunt of the damage. Great evolution chamber block right there as well from Stephano. Trying to get the most out of this, but a lot of drones are already falling. But this is manageable for now. I mean, that's 9 Hellions. I think these 9 Hellions are going to have a very hard time getting away out of this main base as well. A couple of queens right now running towards what seems to be the natural ramp, and I guess 10 drones? 10 drones is actually very manageable. I thought that was going to be way worse. It's very easy to miscontrol that. So 12 Hellions here at the cost of 10 drones, or I guess 10 drones at the cost of 12 Hellions. Not quite the value, I think, that you're looking for if you're a Terran, right? Like 10 workers is something that will be remade here very quickly for the French Zerg player. And I wouldn't be surprised if he just holds down the drone button here for a very long time. The thing is, when these Hellions are thrown away, right, we all know that there's not going to be that much counter pressure anymore from the Terran player, at least for a little while. I mean, maybe he can roam with a few Hellions, but you really don't need that much. Okay, so third base taken right now on the low ground. By the way, this is a rich Vespian geyser, so these purple blobs of gas, I suppose, that you see returned between the extractor and then the hatchery, they actually return 8 gas a trip rather than a conventional 4. So this is mining just as much as a conventional base right now, except that this obviously will run out much quicker. I mean, only 1,700 gas remaining, whereas these right here still have 2,200 apparently. Well, I guess those just started, but you get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, Stephano is certainly going to take this opportunity to drone up as hard as he can, right? He's already getting himself to 4th base. A couple of Hellions still trying to get something done, but really not going to achieve that much as the Zerglings managed to get the wraparound easily. Apparently, though, this did open up the opportunity for another couple of Hellions to move in, and I like this a lot better. Okay, an additional 9 drones, 10 drones right now going down. There's no way these Hellions are going to make their way home, but they're still... Oh, did you see that cute little micro there? Forcing a couple more of those Balings to roll into that second Hellion too. I really like that. So that actually now adds up to 20 drones in total. That's much better already. Okay, so uThermal's gonna follow this up with Cyclones and Hellions. So more Cyclones, more Hellions. Engineering Bay in the wall right now. 4th Command Center coming up as well for uThermal. He's gonna go for an all-out mech approach. Creep spread looking very healthy already towards the center section of the map, but not towards this area right over here. And actually, this is a really good staging ground here for the Terran player. If the creep cannot, you know, be set up over here, it's gonna make it very easy for him to get into this position on the map and to continuously bounce before that hatchery. And eventually, obviously, he's gonna be able to snipe it as well. So a ton of Zerglings right now coming up for Stephano. I wouldn't actually mind seeing a counterattack. Although there is a full wall over here at the 3rd base location. Even now a sensor tower coming up, so that's going to make it very difficult to get this around. Anyways, apparently it's going to be pathogen glands right now, as well as, ooh, interestingly enough, a missile and then also melee upgrades. Very cool. We'll see what Stephano wants to do right here. Oh, he's trying to get the wraparound. If these Balings can explode on the Cyclones, they can deal a tremendous amount of damage. Good microdose so far here by uThermal. Oh, he's so good at that control. Yeah, wonderful job there by him. Getting a ton of value there out of units that could have all blown up in just a matter of seconds. Okay, so there's the Hive coming up. 4th Command Center is going to land over at a 4th base, where a Zergling is already waiting. So, I mean, that one's going to be picked off here, but I think that Stephano probably is aware of the fact that a 4th Command Center should be set up. He's going to try and see if he can do a bit of a counterattack. 1 Hellion already waiting for this, though. And at the very least, if these Zerglings were on attack move, they would have all run into that Hellions, and they would have not really... Or they would have all run into that Hellion rather, and they wouldn't really have been able to achieve that much. Creep is being respread, though. And Stephano did manage to get himself a very solid economy. This is apparently going to be the moment where uThermal is going to switch from those Hellions and Cyclones into Siege Tanks and the Widow Mines. I love the addition of the Widow Mine here. I think Widow Mines actually are really, really good when your opponent is going Ling Bane. This is very much so, I think, an adjustment from uThermal because he's playing Stephano, who's very Hellion. Or I guess he's really like Zergling Baneling heavy, right? Like he's really trying to counter this by going Zerglings and Banes. And these Widow Mines can deal a lot of damage against exactly that type of army. And once again, this area of the map, oh my god, those Zergling roasts, absolutely insane. The Widow Mine detonations also cleaning all of that up. And apparently, while there was a bit of a counterattack, 2 SCVs were killed. That is nothing too worrisome whatsoever. And since these Lings and Banes are off creep, they're not going to be able to connect either. uThermal, once again, taking a very good fight. Even though this Widow Mine was just about to be picked off, that's still 11 kills there in total. Interestingly enough, oh man, he's using that exact same gap where the 4th base was at. He's now using that to create a 5th base. But interestingly enough, right now it's the Terran player who's economically ahead. And that's really not what you want when you're a Zerg in this situation. He's clearing out as much creep as possible. Another base is already being acquired as well. Apparently he's actually floating over to the wrong expansion. Not entirely sure what's going on there. SCVs are mining the other one. But this is now going to be an all-out switch towards what seems to be that more vanilla style of mech, where we have a lot of siege tanks added into the mix as well. You don't really want to go for just Hellions and Cyclones the whole game long, because your opponent is likely going to be able to counter it. I mean, as soon as like spellcasters come into play, especially like Vipers and whatnot, you can abduct units for a very long time. And Cyclone and Hellion just sort of falls off against that kind of army. In this case, though, I love the fact that uThermal is already making the change right now towards siege tanks. Love the fact he's actually running that skin as well. The skin looks really sweet. They're all shiny and glowy and stuff. It's like they're all wrapped up in chrome or like, I don't know, tinfoil paper or like whatever you call that. Tinfoil, I guess, not paper. Ooh. Now, there are a couple of infestors set up, though. As Stephano is known to pull rabbits out of hats. He's being extremely patient here. He does have Neural Parasite. Oh my god, if he can take control of this entire Terran army, that would be a disaster for uThermal. Here we go. Lings and Banes going in every single direction. Siege tanks now fighting for the swarm instead. What an incredible engagement here for Stephano, who's not only going to be able to cross the distance, but also blow that Terran army up with his own siege tanks. Wow. Okay, that was actually a game-ending push there for uThermal, who just ended up losing everything. One Hellbite apparently left alive to tell the tale. There's still a couple of units here set up, but this is a really great move for Stephano, who's now going to be able to transition towards 3-3 upgrades. Even now using a couple of changelings right there on hold position. You see that? Dude, that was actually really cute. Those Hellions and Cyclones could not move through because these changelings were actually blocking their path. Queen's now pulled off the line as well, sniping down a siege tank. They have good upgrades. There you go. They're going to be able to do exactly that. So wait, is he really upgrading Missile here primarily for the Queens and then the Changeling? Or the what are they called? Like the Infested Terrans? I guess so. Now, even though Stephano took a good engagement there, there's no denying that uThermal's economy has completely been untouched, right? I mean, there's been a little sets of counterattacks here and there, but I mean, there's 2 more expansions now taken on the right-hand side of the map. uThermal did lose a pretty big army, and normally that's good because, well, Zerg doesn't want Terran mech to max out. But it doesn't look like there's much of a counterattack right now here for the French Zerg. 300 Zerglings have already gone down, and you can see right here the traits are actually still in favor of the Terran, who's now also mining more. So now he's gonna go and transition into 5 siege tanks at once, getting himself the +2/+2 upgrades as well. Obviously, those upgrades with Cyclone Hellion openers usually start up a little bit later. And I love the fact that he's actually trying to take control of, like, I guess the center section? In a way, he's also diverting attention towards the top, away from like the bottom right-hand corner, where 2 bases are actually mining, towards the top left-hand corner. Which makes you imagine that there's going to be bases mining over here, but they aren't actually there. Anyways, apparently Stephano doesn't care. He's going to go for the counterattack right now. Upgrades did finish for these Zerglings, so they have Adrenal Glands, and the Banelings are going to be enough right here to roll into that Planetary Fortress 2. There's a lot of Infestors right now, man. How many Infestors is that? Just scan once, dude. If you scan once, all of these Infestors are dead. Oh, well. Actually, some of them now took friendly fire. There we go. Scans being utilized. They can actually neural, though, across the little chasm. And once again, with a beautiful move, Stephano takes control of a couple of those siege tanks. At the same time, Hellions, Cyclones, and then also siege tanks are moving forward towards what was previously known as the third base of the Zerg. There's not that much mining over here anymore. Advanced servos right there also allowing these Hellbats to transform really quickly. And I love the fact that he's scanning all over the place right now. It's going to make it difficult for these infestors to get in. I guess that's the reason for these missile turrets, right? I mean, they are detectors first and foremost as well. Apparently there was a bit of a counterattack, but I like this... oh god, once again, dude, how did he get these... Okay, no, not this time, not this time. I was going to say, how did he get these infestors in the correct position? Most of the infested Terrans, though, do get picked off. And these couple of missile turrets are actually super annoying. Also not allowing these overseers to get the high ground, so that means that uThermal is having an easier time to get these siege tanks in the right spot. And they can't really be knurled, obviously, if the high ground vision is not there. Ultralisks now apparently are gonna be is gonna be the name of the game here. I don't really like the Ultralisk transition here, if I'm being honest. I think Ultralisks are amazing in some scenarios, and this is not one of them. He's getting a lot of them, though. I would like to be proven wrong here, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, right, as soon as you see that, yeah, there you go. 6 Liberators are coming up already. He can even start transitioning right now towards Thors. Thors are amazing, and I think uThermal would make some if it wasn't for the fact that he's maxed out. He still has a massive economy, and I mean, at this point in the game, there's really not that much anti-air, right? I mean, there's Queens, but that's about it. These Cyclones, or rather the Liberators, are going to be able to deal so much damage. Now, Transfuse, obviously, absolutely godly. And with all of these siege tanks just sort of sitting out in the middle of the map, I've got a feeling that they're not going to have the easiest time. Queens right now being utilized as well. Apparently, he's trying to micro those Ultralisks outside of those liberation zones. Queens eventually are gonna force this to all be pushed back, and siege tanks and whatnot were cleaned up, but uThermal's economy is still absolutely massive. Somehow, some way, he's found the energy as well to go ahead and do a bit of a counterattack here with a couple of unsiege tanks. Stephano decides to call GG. uThermal obtains victory in game number 1. Okay, so game number 2 will take us to Ephemeron LE. Now, I have to say though, really wonderful game there, especially from uThermal. Most of the time when we see players switch to Terran Mech, they decide to play very passively, right? After like the Cyclone Hellion stage, usually once siege tanks and Thors and Liberators and whatnot are being made, usually that's the moment where a lot of Terran players will allow Zerg to take control of the game. But that was not the case whatsoever for uThermal. Even when he switched towards siege tanks, he was still brave enough to split up his Terran Mech army and to go for multiple timing pushes and multiple attacks on different sides of the map. It's extremely difficult to pull off, because if you end up getting your siege tanks surrounded when they're unsieged or something along those lines, it's a disaster, because siege tanks are very expensive, right? Like, you don't want to lose them. Really cool play there from uThermal, never really allowing Stephano to even have a moment to breathe, and just never really alleviating any of that pressure that he was applying the whole game long. The thing is, if you decide to start playing passively against someone like Stephano, not only did he already have a ton of infestors, he was probably gonna add on like maybe Brute Lords or something as a follow-up, and then if you give him some time, he's gonna start spreading that creep all over the map once again, and all of the early game efforts are completely gone to waste. Now, it's scary, though, when you know your opponent has got a lot of those infestors already burrowed somewhere. I mean, you can never really figure out exactly where they're located. Even though Stephano tried to make the best of it, it certainly was uThermal who was in the driver's seat from start to finish. Now, I was going to say, there certainly is a chance he's going to play a little bit more aggressively this game. He does like playing those very cheesy strategies as well, but not quite going to be the case, as he's just opening up very standardly here, not taking any risks whatsoever. I mean, once again, that game that he played, I believe it was against Sortov at Home Story Cup, comes to mind, where he decided to go 17 Barracks Reaper. I'll go ahead and post a link to that one in the information box in the top right-hand corner of this video, as well as in the description if you're interested. But that was a pretty ridiculous game where he actually legitimately wanted to go for a ton of Reapers, and he thought it was the best strategy on that map. And I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was the case. Now, obviously, with a lot of these new maps, like for example Ephemeron as well, the rush distance is just kind of long, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to make your way to your opponent's natural very easily. And even though there's like a nice ramp to jump up on right here, it's not nearly as big like we had in some of the previous map pools as well. Now, that was a nice little bit of zoning. Beautiful work there by uThermal once again. Getting the kill on one of these drones doesn't sound like a big deal, but using that SCV on hold position, well, now he loses the SCV, so I guess that kind of negates a lot of the advantage. But using the SCV on hold position right there to not allow that, that drone to go back onto the creep, and that was then not allowed. Oh, is he gonna get the tumor? That would be huge. No, he's not. But then it wasn't allowed to morph into a spore crawler because there was no creep behind the mineral line. Nicely done there, but I guess it was just an eye for an eye after all. Just a single worker going down on both sides. Alrighty. Now I'm curious to see if there's going to be any mix-up whatsoever from Stephano. He doesn't really strike me as a player who mixes up his strategy all too much. Usually he's going to be that player who's just defending everything, and then eventually he will try and overwhelm you. And I think he's probably looking at that previous game and he thought, I had a pretty good start. Killed those blue flame Hellions without even really scouting them. I mean, I took some damage, but it wasn't too much. But then obviously in the mid game, he just crumbled under the pressure, right? Like there was just too much of it, and he never got to really get to a position in the game where he felt stable. uThermal this time around not going for the double factory opener, instead just going for the classical 1-1-1. It's also one tech lab and then one reactor. Wouldn't be surprised if he decides to play the bio-based style. We're gonna have to keep an eye out right there on that tech lab to see if maybe he decides to start up his Stimpack upgrade here. Stimpack obviously has become a lot cheaper nowadays. It used to be, or not cheaper rather, but I guess it takes less time. It used to be 121 seconds to do the research. Nowadays it's 100 seconds only, so you can start it a little bit later as well. There's not that much of a rush if you want to go ahead and play bio. So far though, we'll have to see if he decides to go for the 6th and the 8th, or the 7th and the 8th Hellion as well, or if he's going to stick around with 6. He's just going for the most standard opener that we can find in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. Okay, so look at this scout right here from Stephano, right? This is actually a very intentional scout. If you see, and this is just a little bit of a tip, okay, for your Zerg players out there, but if you see your opponent opening up 1-1-1, right? And you see them still producing Hellions at 4 minutes and 15 seconds, you know that that is going to be the 7th and the 8th Hellion that are in production. Now, if that's the case, generally speaking, it's going to be either Blue Flame or Hellbat. So usually you want to make sure that you get yourself like either like a Baling Nest or like a Roach Warren or something along those lines, because otherwise you just sort of lose. In this case, he scouted out, okay, it's just going to be 6 Hellions here. He's going to be totally fine. One Liberator made its way across as well. That's also the reason, by the way, where we don't really see any kind of tech structure. So just straight up into Evolution Chambers once again. Just like he did in the previous game, actually. So even though in that previous game he on paper didn't have a great strat, it worked out just fine for him. That one Queen, trying to be brave. A couple of drones once again get killed, but at the cost of the Liberator. So I think this is just going to be fine for Stephano, because once again, that's going to allow him to hold down that drone button. He is getting himself Spore Crawlers right now. That's actually very interesting to me. This is technically speaking, I guess this must be like a... The only thing that makes sense right now is him making the Spore Crawlers just in case it's gonna be battle cruisers, right? Like, I don't think you want to otherwise go for these spores right now. Maybe he's expecting like a second spore as well, but he decided to put a spore in the main base. I think if he was expecting a second spore, he'd probably make the one in the natural first. Or rather, a second Liberator, he'd probably make the one in the natural first. Anyways, rather than Terran Mech though, it's gonna be bio here from uThermal. Now this is the style that he played for years, pretty much exclusively. He's very good at it. I'm always excited to see this kind of army. He plays it kind of similarly to, for example, someone like Cure. Just play extremely aggressively and just drop all over the place and try and hit your opponent at several different angles at once. Really, just like we saw in that previous game, try and take control of the match and try and just simply let your opponent crumble under the pressure. Now that's a lot of Zerglings, but yeah, they're really not getting that much done. Those Hellions from earlier, still very, very nice. You're gonna be able to force this army away. Now look at this difference though, right? So in the previous game, Cyclones and Hellions were roaming the map. A lot of the creep got killed continuously. In this game, we've only really gotten like, I don't know, maybe 30, maybe 40 seconds later than we had, you know, in the previous one where those Cyclones and Hellions started roaming. The creep spread is already extremely far. Stephano is very good at that. I think he took a page out of Scarlet's book initially when she started doing that a ton. Nowadays, everyone's extremely good at it, but there's still a noticeable difference between, like, for example, like, top 50 Grandmaster level players and then, like, pro gamers, right? Like, there's a significant difference in the amount of creep that they spread. These tumors are going to move continuously. If Stephano doesn't do something about it, these tumors are going to be a massive disaster for him. uThermal actually unloading. I think he probably expects that this base is taken, even though he hasn't technically seen it. You could also take the 4th base over here if you're a Zerg, but he's just being extremely cautious. Maybe he already expected a 5th at this point in the game. Bailing speed is going to finish up in a little bit. +2/+2 has started up as well. Already an infestation pit too. So Stephano, once again, looking to go up towards that very quick hive. Links and Banes, though, should be able to defend this. A couple of Hellbats moving on the left-hand side of the map as well. Zerglings coming up with the surround. And even though a couple of tumors were killed, nothing too crazy. And, well, I've got a feeling that these are not going to achieve that much either. There's no bailing speed yet, right? So Centrifugal Hook's just about to finish. That's the roly-poly upgrade for these Hellbats. You gotta be careful. You don't want to just, like, you know, let all of your Zerglings bleed out, I suppose. But for the time being, I mean, I really like this position significantly more than the previous one in the previous game for Stephano. Now he's allowed to play his A game. This is what he likes to do. Macro up, get himself a ton of workers, go for a lot of counterattacks, and just try and play that very mobile Zerg army. You kill a couple of tumors, immediately a dozen more get added on. It's even going after all of the rocks right now, replacing any tumors that are lost. A key component of high-level Zerg. And while uThermal is trying to pressure, right? Like, he's got several medevacs loaded up with units. On this map, I guess it's not something you can easily achieve. Because there's not that many angles where you can really drop at either. I mean, I guess you could drop the natural, but that's easily taken care of with a couple of spores over there. You can really only pressure on the right-hand side of the map, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. These bio units are very powerful. They only have +1, but I think it's going to be enough. There we go. Base does get picked off, and that hurts. There is a new expansion that's just about to finish for Stephano. uThermal did manage to also now secure his own 4th command center, which is really critical. Already going up towards the 5th. This is obviously going to be a planetary fortress, so a really strong staging ground as well to try and push from. Picking up once again those weakened Marines, but I mean, they're fighting over creep right now, right? Like, that's not really what Terran wants. You don't really want to fight for creep at this point in the game. Now, this base, I've got a feeling it's not going to live for very long. The Zerglings actually just ran away from that location as well. Keep in mind, there's no anti-air here, right? Other than a couple of Queens and Spores. So it's still one of those things where certainly Terran can take control of this at any moment. That base is not going to live. Not a chance. And finally, there's some Widow Mines right now in position here as well in the center. So uThermal is starting to take control of this, killing the tumors that are reaching all the way to his natural expansion already. Ultralisk Cavern once again coming up. We have the Adrenal Glands upgrade now also researching for Stephano. So he's going to be able to get himself some extremely powerful Zerglings. Not actually favoring +3/+3 just yet. So I guess he's really saving up money to get himself a bunch of these Ultras out immediately. That's the Ultralisk Cavern done. I really think he could have 4-3-3 though. I hope he didn't forget it for him. That would be a disaster. Okay, now that 4th is pretty quick. 5th is going to be even faster, obviously. So we'll see if uThermal is going to be able to make something happen here. He's still so pinned back though. So I know that he's maxed out. I know he's got pretty much all of the economy in the world. But this is the moment where I always get a little bit worried for Terrans. Because he's been playing this whole game without really being able to do any pressure to the Zerg. And while Stephano doesn't even have that crazy of an economy, I would love to actually see him sitting right now at like 85 drones. Maybe even 90. He still has a very good economy. And he's got that creep spread as well, right? Like, the creep spread is starting to be contained a little bit. But Stephano is going to be able to max out on this dream army here pretty soon. Both players trying to get as big of an army up as possible. Apparently, he's going to once again roll the Banes just straight up into the planetary fortress. Man. So expensive, right? So expensive. Apparently, he feels comfortable doing exactly that. An eye for an eye as both of those bases full. Already, though, new command centers are being added on. uThermal did... Well, he could have. I was going to say he should have. He honestly should have already acquired this a little while ago. He had that command center over here for a long time. I guess he's been preoccupied microing on the right-hand side of the map, trying to continue staging forward. At the same time, though, lots of Lings and Banes now are going in for the counterattack rather than defending with all of his units at home. We see Stephano committing a large chunk of his forces to the counterattack instead, recognizing that a lot of that Terran army is currently out or for blood, and they're trying to see if he can potentially win the game right here. uThermal, that is. He's going after all of the economy, but at the same time, we see Stephano now flooding into those bases of the Terran player. There are more expansions ready to be acquired as well for Zerg. Command centers obviously were forced to get cancelled already. Another command center does get killed, and Stephano, while he did end up losing a hatchery there, and he also lost the one up here on the high ground, he still has a solid economy, and he still has a very scary army. When you're mostly focusing on bio units, right, these Ultralisks are absolutely worth their weight in gold. I always think they're amazing against Marines and siege tanks in particular. 3rd command center just ended up falling, and Stephano is chasing down a big bio army with one of those really beefy Ultralisks. Now, just now, he did finish up that anabolic synthesis upgrade as well. It's going to allow him to run around with these Ultralisks a little bit quicker off creep. 3-3 upgrades, finally about halfway done here. But this is a bit of a disaster right now for uThermal, right? He was certainly in a good spot. But this is generally speaking what happens when you don't do any pressure. You just simply get overwhelmed at some point by the Zerg. And that was just simply so much Swarm. Now this is certainly not... Oh, I was going to say, this is certainly not game over yet. But apparently uThermal thinks otherwise. He decides to GG out. He must recognize here that the 3-3 upgrades would finish up very shortly. He found out about the base on the left-hand side of the map as well. He's like, okay, well... You're mining still on that side. I have no more economy. I'll just step out. We'll go to game number 3. Okay, so game number 3 will take us to Disco Bloodbath. I would love to see a little bit of cheese here from uThermal, but obviously, if it's in a tournament setting, you don't necessarily want to go ahead and do so. I think if we were going to see cheese from him, it should have been the previous game. It's just going to be a depot. Yeah, no, just going to be a depot SCV instead. Nothing that's being sent across the map. Doesn't mean he's not going to cheese, but... I would be very surprised. The thing is, maybe he's also valuing Stephano's micro highly enough. So for those of you unfamiliar, before Stephano became a StarCraft 2 pro gamer, he was a very high-level Warcraft 3 player. And especially the guys that were very good at Warcraft 3, which is a much more micro-heavy game than StarCraft 2, they became extremely good at just simply controlling their units. And usually those were the players as well that were just simply very difficult to cheese because they would just simply defend with very small amounts of army because they had years of practice trying to control smaller amounts of units in Warcraft 3. I remember when Grubby's first decided to switch to StarCraft 2 as well. Obviously these days he's more or less like a live streamer, but still focused a lot on Warcraft 3. But when Grubby first switched over to StarCraft 2, he definitely played Protoss a little bit differently than the general Protoss population at the time, focusing on much more micro-heavy units and trying to get maximum value out of those instead. Anyways, no cheese for the time being here for uThermal. And, well, none of that for Stephano either, although I would be very surprised if Stephano decided to go ahead and play that style. For those of you curious, by the way, what made Stephano so good back in the day? Well, everyone was much lower skill level, right? First and foremost. So the skill level back in like 2011 to 2013 or so, it was significantly lower than we have nowadays in StarCraft 2. But he did these relentless roach timing attacks. So usually, I remember when I first saw Stephano doing these roach timing pushes, right? Usually what happened is as soon as someone opened up Stargate, roaches were considered to be a wasted unit. But Stephano showed us that, well, even if they're opening up with, like, a couple of Void Rays, if I just make enough roaches, I can just sort of win. And for some reason, that really wasn't considered to be a very viable strategy for the first couple of years in StarCraft. I mean, I joke about it nowadays a lot on the live stream, but more stuff beats less stuff. Oftentimes, it doesn't matter. Like, if you have 200 roaches... Or, well, 200 supply worth of roaches, I guess, and your opponent has 3 Void Rays. Yeah, eventually they will be able to kill it, but not without losing all of their stuff in the process, right? So more stuff beats less stuff. It's a concept that that Stephano, at the very least, judging from these games, still certainly lives by. Just continuously tries to make a ton of Zerglings and Banelings, and just tries and get a lot of value with them. And even though he doesn't necessarily trade evenly there, he doesn't take the most, I guess, economical trades. He just overwhelms you in the long run if you give him an inch. So we'll see what this game is going to look like. I think it's probably going to be a more mech-focused opener once again, although we do already have a lot of Marines coming up. Actually, we'll see. This kind of looks like a Marine drop opener, especially when you go for the reactor right here, but we'll see what kind of follow-up he's going to go for. There is now a second Overlord in position. Or actually, no. This is just a Zergling over here at the front. But there's an Overlord in position right now in the back of the main base of Terran. I would actually love to see, like, a Battlecruiser opener. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. I don't think we're going to have that in this game. Unless he starts up a Fleet Beacon, or a Fusion Core, rather, immediately. Now, is he just going to switch it over right here with the... What is he going to do? Is he just going to make 2 Medavacs? Yeah. So, I wouldn't have been confused by this build if it wasn't for the fact that there's no second barracks researching Stimpack, right? Like, this kind of looks like a 16 Marine drop, but without Stimpack. And, well, I guess also not with 16 Marines. It's going to hit significantly earlier, but it's going to be completely unupgraded Marines. And unupgraded Marines you can deal with just Zerglings and Metabolic Boost and a couple of Queens. Maybe it's one of those builds, though, that's technically speaking inferior, but it may very well catch your opponent off guard. Especially because Stephano, once again, he hasn't really shown us too much. Very quick 3rd Command Center, too. So that's actually a big tell. So the Medevac actually has already left. That's a lot of units in there, by the way. One Widow Mine as well. What a cute little push here from uThermal. Very interesting. Anyways, that command center went up about 20 seconds earlier than we normally see it in Zerg vs. Terran in a standard build. So I think that uThermal is probably banking on the fact that this this may very well catch his opponent off guard and keep him occupied, so he can get the third command center up, mostly uncontested. There is that one Spore Crawler just about to finish up, and apparently he's gonna switch positions, but he's still gonna drop inside of that main base. That Widow Mine, dude. That Widow Mine is so odd. Oh man, this is a really interesting build. Now that one Spore is actually being a disaster here as well. Oh god! Well. There goes me, complimenting that one Widow Mine, huh? That one Widow Mine certainly helping out the Zerg player more than the Terran. Dealing a lot of friendly fire. But I guess, you know what? Like, even though this is not looking like the best trade here for uThermal, there's not going to be any counter-aggression here either from Stephano. He did halt droning there for a while. Third command center is just simply going to send on over to watch the third base already. Is he going to actually plant down a planetary fortress there? I don't see any... Oh, actually, you know what? He's going mech. Ah, okay. So I guess he doesn't have an engineering bay yet, so he's not going to be able to start up the planetary fortress. Very interesting, though. Yeah, just adding on more and more. So that's going to be the 4th and the 5th factory right now. Very cool. So I guess he does want to go for a planetary there, because otherwise he would have started up the orbital command immediately. But he just doesn't have the resource yet. This must be a build that uThermal has practiced. Because it certainly seems a little out of the ordinary, and it seems to be designed specifically to counter an opponent who's playing very, very, I guess, like, no scouting focus. Like, he barely does any scouting, right? Like, there's very little of it, just some Zerglings and all that. Now, these Hellions just get surrounded for free. Don't really know exactly why that's the case. Apparently, the Marines right now trying to see if they can kill a Queen. Maybe even go after this 4th base, too. 5 drones end up getting picked off. But uThermal, once again... He doesn't need those Marines, right? This is also a bit of a mind game. You know what? If you see your opponent going Marines and Medivacs, right? Early on, and they go for a Marine drop. What do you think are the odds that they're transitioning towards mech? It's kind of like... So, the way that Stephano is playing this, it's kind of like the polar opposite of, like, for example, a Raynor, or especially, for example, a Serral. Serral is extremely vigilant with scouting. Like, if there's one thing that, like, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what sets Serral apart, but whenever people ask, hey, look, what sets Serral apart? It seems like he scouts more so than anyone else. Once again, look at these Marines. He's not seen that this is any mech play, right? Like, he knows it's 1-1-1. He knows there's a quick third command center, whoop-de-doo. He's going Lings and Banes, and he's going for, like, you know, Baneling upgrades and Ling upgrades and all that. But he doesn't know that it's actually going to be a mech switch right now. He hasn't seen any of these Cyclones yet. Now, these are some very brave Banelings trying to get some value here. I don't know if they're going to be able to waddle all the way towards that third base. I don't think so. uThermal already waiting on the low ground. But this is such a cool style here from uThermal, and it's kind of abusing the fact that there's not that much scouting information here in general. Once again, that Medivac right here, this time around not hauling any Marines, but instead it's going to have a couple of those Hellions inside of it instead. More Hellions and Cyclones now pushing on the right-hand side of the map too. Blue Flame did finish up. There we go. Once again, the drone barbecue. Getting a lot of value. At the same time, he's going after the hatchery here on the right-hand side. Macfield Accelerator is going to finish up in a little bit. A lot of drones, though, were killed. And I think actually... Oh, I missed it, sadly. But the Banelings also moved on over to watch that mineral line. So while this is all going on, right? And yeah, Stephano is losing a lot over here. He also ended up killing 17 SCVs. So, multi-pronged aggression everywhere, to the point where I even can't keep up or I can't even keep up with everything that's going on. Didn't think actually that was going to deal any damage, because these Hellions and Cyclones were rallied towards the low ground, but apparently they managed to sneak in, still find a weak spot. Imagine if those couple of Banelings, though, didn't sneak in, right? This would have been an absolute disaster here for Stephano. It still honestly is. Losing most of his economy. Finally, once again, securing a base here. There's a lot of Links and Banes out on the map, but once again, no anti-air. So these Medivacs are going to continually haul units inside of the main base of the Zerg. One thing, by the way, you may have noticed here as well from Stephano is that he never really goes for any macro hatcheries. So it's common for people to take a 4th base and then also a macro hatchery just for the larva production inside of the main. But in this case, or really like in Stephano's case, he barely ever does that. He pretty much always just simply goes for a 5th hatchery instead, and just sort of treats that like a macro hatchery, you know? Like, he's not actually utilizing it in the way that most people would with workers and all that. Here we go, though. Hellbat's now being morphed in. That Medivac healing still. Getting a lot of value. Oh my god, so much damage being done. And at the same time, once again, the Hellion Cyclone Ball moving towards the right-hand side of the map. uThermal forcing the attention of Stephano in several different angles. No console on that base, that's a kill. And in the meantime, he's also securing now himself his 4th command center. +1/+1 will finish up in a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised to see the siege tank transition here. So he's getting himself a couple of tanks, getting himself a couple of Widow Mines, recognizing his opponent once again. Wants to focus here on mostly Lings and Banes. Apparently Infestors are going to be the follow-up right now too. So I guess Parasite once again will be a choice here from Stephano. But he's losing so much. He's never really been allowed to take his economy to the next level, right? And I love the fact that uThermal has been playing the mind game here from the start. Making his opponent think that it's going to be a bio-based army. And then completely blindsiding his opponent the other way. What a cool style. Really nicely done. This is one of those things that would never really work very well on the ladder. But it works like a charm in tournament play, right? Like it's very much so a tournament play. And not something you want to pull off on the ladder. Because it's likely not going to do nearly as much. Very much so playing the opponent, right? Because really all it takes in order to analyze this is just like an Overseer inside of the main base to confirm exactly what's going on. Or maybe like quick Overlord speed so you know exactly what's going on. Stephano, though, never got the creep out of here anymore. And that means once again the base here will get cancelled. Now Parasite is about, I don't know, 15% of the way done. I've got a feeling that it's not going to finish anytime soon. Not in time at the very least for this push. Well, I guess... you can still go ahead and utilize fungal growth here. There's no siege tanks in his army, by the way, so uThermal isn't even really trying to get too far here. Liberator inside of the main base, also now forcing that drone mining to halt. And you know what? uThermal is throwing away those Hellions and Hellbats and a couple of the Marines as well. But that really wasn't even the majority of his army. So GG was called. Stephano taps out of the game. But if you look right now at the units, once again, that are moving in for the counterattack as well, there are just simply so many here for the Terran player. So much more than there is for Zerg anyway. These Zerglings, yeah, there's 42 of them. They're pretty good. But they're not going to be able to achieve that much against this many Hellbats and then this many Widow Mines as well. And once again, right, uThermal already setting up a counterattack. I don't know if he knew about the fact that this base was actually cancelled. Oh, actually, no. It got cancelled because Stephano tapped out of the game. Never mind. Yeah, so this army right over here, that one was already on its way to counter that base here on the left-hand side. And I guess at that point, they could join forces, right? The army from the right-hand side and the army from the left-hand side in the center to assault the main base of the Zerg player instead. So there we have it. A well-deserved victory for uThermal, in my opinion. Absolutely wonderfully played there by him. I gotta say, I especially liked game number 1 and game number 3. I thought they were very, very good. Game number 2 on Ephemeron, I wasn't the biggest fan of that one. I mean, I like the bio-based armies, but I don't know if Ephemeron is that good of a map for it, you know what I mean? Like, you can really only drop in those spawn locations at the very least that we had on that map, in the top right-hand corner, and, like, maybe the natural, but it's very difficult to get the multi-pronged harassment going in the way that the expansions are laid out and just simply the way that the map is designed. So I guess uThermal just simply tried his very best, didn't quite get the value that he was looking for, and he tapped out, went to game number 3 instead, and... well, here on Disco Bloodbath, he showed his opponent who's boss. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I will see you once again in the next one.